And now it's time for the honorable mentions. For Warner Brothers, there's a variety of titles in the animation field, especially the ones presented by the same company. Some examples include Robert Dangerfield, Thumbelina in its original release, The Swan Princess, which was part of the New Line Cinema technically, The King and I, The Polar Express, The Ant Bully, and so much more, including Happy Feet and Gahul Legends of the Guardians, which the former became the first animated hit since Space Jam for Warner Brothers that they were motivated to craft Warner Animation Group. But then again, those films were also just distribution examples and of course exclusively produced by Village Roadshow Pictures, despite the fact that Animal Logic was involved for the animation before its involvement with the Lego franchise. Personally, I wish to pick Scooby-Doo and Zombie due to its great quality compared to Mask of Phantasm, but unfortunately, due to the fact that unlike that film, this movie was released in home media only as part of the direct-to-video market. But despite that fact, we shall talk about something related to the latest Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. But before that, we shall go back all the way back to technically the golden age of Hollywood, specifically the 1960s when television was dominating the industry, and theatrical cartoons were complicating some studios, and this one was no exception. The honorable title that I'm about to say is technically one of the last productions in which Warner Bros. Cartoon Studios made, but at the same time, it was the first major Warner Bros. Picture in which got involved with plenty of animation elements, despite not being recognized or even talked about like other later hybrid movies like we all know and love, like Space Jam, and yet has managed to become quite popular and influencing many people. Even though there's barely any information about this movie, I can somehow manage in summarizing many details as possible. So with a touch of Don Knotts' charm and scientific theories, as the first honorable mention on this part, we shall talk about something that you have to be very careful on what you wish for, and that message has been shown underwater by none other than the incredible Mr. Limpet.
The film tells the story set in World War II of a fish lover named Henry Limpet, whose wife Bessie is fed up with his marine hobbies after a watery accident at home and forces him to get rid of his scientific fish activities. One day at the beach, he accidentally falls into the lagoon and magically transforms into a fish with glasses, where he experiences happily his form by also meeting a crab named Krusty and falls in love with a female specimen named Ladyfish. But when he realizes that he additionally has a powerful sound wave ability to impact stuff and enemies, plus giving signals, he decides to go and help the Navy to defeat the Nazi submarines in order to save heroically the American country. The film is based on the 1942 book Mr. Limpet by Theodore Pratt, which was published during the Second War and became the basis for John Rose, Joe DiMona, and Jonathan Brewer to write the script, who the former also became the film's producer, and casting Don Knotts as the title character on March 1962, since he was on hiatus for the Andy Griffith Show, not to mention that he previously served the army on World War II, thus making this his first lead role in a film. In other words, when crafting the story, one element was put as the scientific belief of reverse evolution, which is what the main character believes when it comes to the theory of transforming into a different creature. Funny enough is that during World War I and World War II, there was a mine known as a limpet, a type of naval mine attached to a target by magnets named because of their superficial similarity to the sea creature limpet, and not exactly a fish but a sea snail specimen the character is essentially based on. And his name still hints at his tenacity from the creature, even putting that reference on the German Navy's identification called Das Limpet, based essentially on the character. Speaking of characters, there have been most likely a variety of changes when casting several recognizable classic actors for the film that even some were involved in and then taken by others, plus the fact of marking the final film appearance of Larry Keating and Charles Meredith, even including some renowned celebrities like TV actress Carol Cook as Bessie Limpet and Jack Weston as the war sailor mate George Stickle. As for the voices, while Nuts portrays both live action and the animated main character, TV actress Elizabeth McRae provided the voice of Ladyfish, and the funny thing is that both actors were employed in Andy Griffith's Mayberry franchise respectively as Deputy Barney Fife and Luan Puby, Gomer Pyle's girlfriend in the later seasons of Gomer Pyle USMC. And renowned voice actor Paul Frees provided the voice of the hermit crab Krusty. And apparently, for some reason, his voice had to be recorded in a way similar to a telephone sound compared to Limpet's natural voice and most likely size.
Krusty? Krusty? You alright, Krusty?
Gotta hand it to you, Flatbush. That whale-busting noise of yours is really something.
A few months later in July, film director Arthur Lubin signed on for the Warner Brothers production, and the filming began at the studio backlot later that same month. The fun fact is that when filming the ships in certain shots, the destroyer USS Alfred H. Cunningham was the naval ship featured in the film. Another ship used in filming was the cruiser USS Galveston, which was referred to as USS Los Angeles in the movie, and originally the cruiser USS Los Angeles was offered for the use at the time of pre-production planning, but was decommissioned in late 1963 before principal filming began. Even according to the wiki infos, there is a double anachronistic catch. The certain point that Los Angeles was not commissioned until late 1945. And Galveston had been converted to a guided missile cruiser and clearly shows her 1960s configuration with large radars and missile launchers in place of her removed gun turrets. But then again, despite those factors, they managed to creatively use them as elements for war standards regardless. Since this is also a hybrid film, the animated sequences were handled by Warner Brothers Cartoons Studio under the supervision of Robert Mackinson. Although Bill Tytla was credited as the animation supervising director, a matter of health issues and disagreements with the producer, this led Mackinson to take over most of the animation directing duties early in production. So, the animation goal for the visual aspects was crafting most of the shots when the characters are swimming underwater and cartoony character designs mostly based on the actors, specifically Limpet as a caricature of the actor Nuts himself, with Krusty in most likely a cartoony Looney Tunes style, while other sea creatures would be more like real-based animated creatures. And speaking of which, unlike most of the wacky WB cartoons, the character animation had to be smooth yet mostly not very exaggerating movements like previous cartoons, and even implementing some watery effects in most likely a similar way to Disney's Pinocchio. And by the way, other special effects put on the film besides of the submarines underwater were the scenes when the animated Limpet interacts with the live-action characters, with the additional use of most likely a technical model for the physical interaction of the water when blending the animated character more believably on camera after carefully shooting frame by frame fluently. At least for the most part, since sometimes the special effects weren't that perfect in some shots. Especially the classic use of probably blue screen for the live-action footage backgrounds in some scenes. In other words, the Coney Island Pier, naval scenes, and other aquatic scenes were filmed on Stage 16 at Warner Brothers Studio, and it has been holding around 2.5 million gallons of water. Other effects, specifically the sound effect when Limpet tramps, were apparently the combination of an animal and metallic echoes, though we could say that it was a manageable use from a recorded donkey, or even a Godzilla-like sound.
Oh! Golly, did that come out of me?
This was the final theatrical WB Cartoon Studio project before closing on December 1963, as well as one of the few non-Looney Tunes productions that the crew worked on. Even though this was not exactly a musical like other family musicals of its time like Mary Poppins, 5 songs were written by Oscar-nominated composers Sammy Fain and Harold Adamson for the soundtrack as mostly musical moments and even montages, including the one performed in voiceover by Nuts himself, I Wish I Were a Fish, which that song became a highlight that even TV radio show host Arthur Godfrey made a recording of the song to help promote the feature for the movie trailer. Even a comic book based on the film was released to market the film's arrival. After around 2 years of production, the movie premiered on January 20, 1964 at the Weeki Wachee Springs Underwater Theater in Spring Hill, Florida, and it was the world's first underwater movie premiere in movie history. And when the movie got its official release outside the water a couple of months later on March 28, the reception was rather questionable. What I mean is that while most likely enjoyed by viewers in general, it was mostly mixed by critics, yet some considered the movie as a solid family entertainment, even by appreciating the animated segments and the leading acting debut of Nuts, who also enjoyed his role in the movie itself. On the other hand, regarding the box office results, well, like subconsciously relating to some of Animat's reactions, I really don't know. There were no confirmations of the budget and not even a domestic gross of knowing if it was a success or a failure. Then again, there have been some mentions that this was Nuts' first box office hit, so I guess we can consider that as an official answer that the movie went very well after all. Though maybe quite underperformed according to Nuts himself. Regardless of the reception, the film received the Box Office Blue Ribbon Award for Best Picture of the Month, specifically April for the entire family, at the last event of Box Office Magazine's awards of the same year. As time went by, the film became a family classic that was even put on TV airings from CBS, premiering on December 29, 1968, as part of the CBS Friday Night Movies, making it the first CBS feature matinee aired during that program. Not to mention that also the musical track I Wish I Were a Fish became quite popular, that has become a hit that spawned different recorded versions. The film eventually became quite a cult classic that even made a legacy of its own, specifically in the field of animation. And regarding that part, the animated segments, specifically the backgrounds, is what influenced biologist artist Stephen Hillenburg in creating the world of the hit animated Nickelodeon series SpongeBob SquarePants. Even probably the character designing style is also what similarly influenced the art style of Shark Tale by DreamWorks Animation. In other words, the fish character Mr. Limpet managed to make some media appearances besides of comic books, including a couple of cameos, that it is one in Disney's The Little Mermaid and the other at the Disney's California Adventure attraction. And the curious reason why the character appearing in most Disney media is because besides of Don Knotts appearing in most Disney projects, is because many Disney artists were influenced by the animated works of Bill Titela, who besides animating and designing Disney characters, he also designed the character Limpet. And so the artists made a tribute and homage to the artist plus Don Knotts by even making a visual reference to the Warner Brothers character. The funny fact is that in the 1990s, a remake has been long in development that even Don Knotts was aware of those plans, and at that time, Jim Carrey was up for the role and Knotts offered his support, so the project entered in development in 1996 when Steve Rotnick and Leo Benvenuti, the same writing duo of the Warner Brothers animated hybrid movie Space Jam plus other comedies, were hired as writers for the remake, and Ace Ventura 2 director Steve Oderkirk as director and co-writer, with some storyboard sequences made for the remake. However, when $10 million was spent for the animation test by digitally mapping Carrey's motion captured human face into a fish body based on most of the artwork, I think we can say that the well-made yet uncanny character drawings were indeed disastrous results to execute, and so due to creative differences, Steve had to let go of the project, along with Jim moving to other projects. Okay, one more time, but with SpongeBob, who I previously referenced thanks to the film's artistic impact and influence.
Flappin' Flotsam, what's that?
Well, at least we must be thankful that Shark Tale has quite the upper hand in CGI caricature standards. And so there have been other plans involving different crews to potentially make the remake that never happened, Like starting in 2000, Beavis and Butthead creator Mike Judge was going to direct and write the movie for 2001, with several comedian options like Robin Williams, Chris Rock, Mike Myers, and Adam Sandler for the leading role. And then Disney director Kevin Lima was attached with Zach Galifianakis for the lead role in 2009. But both eventually left the project as well, and lastly, director Richard Linklater with a variety of all-star cast involved, only to leave the project to concentrate on his movie Everybody Wants Some, making the remake uncertain at this recorded point. Even if this was the last cartoon production by the original animation studio after Termite Terrace, this was quite a beginning for an animated involvement in a feature film. Interestingly enough, the film has been hailed as one of the greatest movies of all time, that even got later a DVD Blu-ray release in widescreen as part of the Warner Archive collection. Like I said before, even though this was the end of Warner Bros. Cartoons, this was also technically a new beginning for Warner Bros. Animation. And the peculiar movie itself has shown in the golden times of Hollywood and Warner Bros. Beyond the wars and science, even most likely the theory of evolution, or in this scientific case, the reverse evolution, that there is one animated fish icon with a wish that memorably has proved the heroic spirit of America. You know, I originally wanted to say just 2 things, plus probably this could be cheating for this one. But I guess this is also convenient because its popularity forced Warner Bros. In releasing it on several theaters worldwide, since many comic book adaptations deserved the theatrical experience, and this, interestingly, was one of them. So, the second honorable mention beyond insanity and a dark punchline, we have Batman, The Killing Joke, based on the graphic novel of the same name by Alan Moore and Brian Bolland. The film's main plot is about a dark case in which Batman, who after dealing the resignment from Barbara Gordon as Batgirl due to conflicting partnership between the two, witnesses murder cases by the Joker and decides to interrogate him at Arkham. But when he realizes that he unexpectedly broke out from jail, Joker attacks Barbara and Jim Gordon for his insane purposes of kidnapping and making Jim mad after shooting her badly. So Batman has to save Jim and face the Joker, who also has a sad origin of making himself mad, in one of the most complex and psychological battles between the hero and villain's sanity. As I said, the film is based on the 1988 novel, which at the time when it was released, it received polarizing reviews, with some hailing it as the definitive Joker story and others criticizing it as misogynistic. Then again, the comic influenced many artists, including the Batman filmmakers Tim Burton and Chris Nolan. Even Bruce Timm was enchanted by the book's deep elements that he considered one day in making an animated adaptation, as he did later with his own co-written acclaimed comic, Batman Adventures Mad Love, which that one was adapted into one of the episodes of the new Batman Adventures. The development of the film adaptation started in 2009, with Bruce Timm in charge as the film's director, and the fun fact is that there were attempts tryouts of making an R-rated animated film based on the novel, with some character artwork by Phil Bourassa. But unfortunately, production had to be shelved due to the underperformance of the DC live-action adaptation of Moore's Watchmen. In 2011, when Mark Hamill announced that he was no longer playing the Joker, he was still interested in reprising his role, but only if there was an animated adaptation of The Killing Joke. That intention in mind resulted a fan campaign for its potential production, especially on Twitter in late October 2011. Since then, a petition Facebook page was made by the fans in 2012, and by the following year, Bruce Timm expressed interest of reviving the project as a possibility. Then finally, on July 10, 2015, during the Justice League Gods and Monsters panel at San Diego Comic-Con, it was announced that the animated film based on the novel was in development, with Timm as executive producer and animator Sam Liu as the director after making the direct-to-video film Gods and Monsters presented at the event, slated to be released in 2016. And eventually gathering highly expected voice actors Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill to reprise their roles, with Tara Strong reprising her role as Batgirl and Ray Wise would join the cast to voice Commissioner Gordon. But when starting production on the adaptation, there was a catch. Despite having movie qualities, the graphic novel wasn't long enough to make a feature film and probably would have been 50 to 40 minutes of a short movie. So Bruce and his team had to add a lot of more story and action elements for the film. Specifically the prologue in giving more action scenes plus giving more layers to Barbara's character of who she is and why she had to resign her role as Batgirl after a series of conflicts with the main character, especially her conflicting relationship. To do that, writer Brian Azzarello managed to adapt conceptually her portrayal from her Oracle character of the late 1980s Suicide Squad comics written by John Ostrander and his wife Kim Jale, in which Barbara becomes the title character after the incident and still making heroic activities on a chair as an extended way to follow up on the Killing Joke storyline as a prologue and epilogue regarding her heroic side of the overall adaptation by giving the point of losing everything she had and yet managing to keep fighting for justice with a modern concept yet pretty much the same storyline feel. This was also a convenient addition as a way to present the movie to the audience who are most likely not familiar with the source material. In terms of animation production, it was not that easy to visually adapt. While adapting the city backgrounds digitally and the CGI vehicles in dark tone aspects, the biggest challenge that the crew have faced was trying to adapt Boland's art style because obviously the comic had a much realistic quality and it would have been very complex to translate into 2D animation with barely any stylized elements. And I think it's safe to say that one of the character designers had a lot of problems referencing the look of the Killing Joke graphic novel that in the end got mad as well. So instead of that, even skipping the previous sketches made in 2009, they approached another artist called Kevin Nowlan, who previously worked on other DC animated projects, even some comic books, by making a simpler yet very similar style that would be easier to animate. By the way, besides not making realistic looks, some changes had to be made in most of the character designs, especially one of the Joker's freaky minions, that in the original, a two-bodied woman with 3 legs only to translate her better into a two-headed version. With all settled, the crew crafted the sequences from storyboards and then the animation style, different from the other animated versions, including the Bruce team artwork, was outsourced to the Answer Studio Company Ltd in Japan, giving the anime feel to the character animation like they did with many of the direct-to-video film adaptations and some theatrical Japanese animated films. Not to mention crafting the fluent and intense action scenes with certain effects and the details for the dark and gothic atmosphere digitally, plus giving the film noir aspect for the tragic and suspenseful flashback scenes when ex-worker Widow Jack Napier becomes the Joker. And you got to admit that Jack fits well for his true name thanks to Tim Burton when adapting the source material to his Batman version, so we may name him Jack as well for this version considerably. Since this is a thriller with horror elements, in particularly the main storyline, for the musical score, the composing trio Christopher Carter, Michael McHuston, and Lolita Ritmanis had to implement the music reminiscent to the classic Alfred Hitchcock movies with the creepy style of Bernard Herrmann, and plus the fact that they composed the rhyming sequence of the Joker torturing Gordon into a creepy Broadway-styled musical number highlighting the madness and performed by Heymold himself. When production was completed for more than a year, it was the most anticipated film for comic book fans. In April 2016, Warner Home Video confirmed that the film would be the first Batman film, plus the first WB animated film, and the first of the DC animated original movies universe series to be rated R by the MPAA. And ever since the production started, WB Entertainment president Sam Register encouraged producer Bruce Timm and his team to remain faithfully to the source material regardless of the rating, and that the goal was to responsibly present the core audience, particularly the comics-loving community, with an animated film that authentically represented the tale they know all too well. Originally, the film was going to be released as a direct-to-video film, but due to its great popularity, The film was instead released in theaters and digitally at the same time on July 25, 2016 for a special one-night event, and then theatrically releasing it in some other countries with the association of Fathom Events and Bio Cinemas. Not to mention that another R-rated comic book-based film, Deadpool, proved a great worthy example of pushing new R-rated superhero films into the big screen with potential success as a special occasion. With a budget of $3.5 million and officially a 2D animated film, the film also became technically the first animated Batman film to be released in theaters since 1993 Mask of the Phantasm. And so, when the anticipated adaptation got its release on July 25 on the big screen, the joke turned indeed into a great event with different results. On one side, the film domestically grossed $3.2 million on the first night of the Fathom Events screenings, becoming the biggest theatrical event in Fathom's history, and overall, the movie grossed $3.8 million in the USA and Canada, and for a total gross of $4.4 million worldwide, making it successful enough for technically a theatrical yet limited release event, and became the 9th highest grossing R-rated animated film worldwide. As for the critical reception, compared to the source material from both critics and fans, it got mixed reviews for its overall adaptation despite the creative additions for the feature length. Although elements like the animation style, action scenes, voice performances, especially Conroy and Hamill's, and general faithfulness to its source material, more specifically the second half, were praised. The other parts, however, including the long-paced prologue and mostly the questionable portrayal of Batgirl, were criticized and most likely quite polarizing, with many considering that the first half felt unnecessary and disconnected from the second half. In response of the criticized issue, screenwriter Azzarello stated that the thing about this is that it's controversial, so the point was that more controversy had to be added, while producer Tim had to state, "We were aware that it's a little risky. There's definitely some stuff in that first part of the movie that's going to be controversial. Here's where we came down on the specific issue. It was really important to us to show that both of the characters make some pretty big mistakes. His parental skills aren't that great, maybe never having had kids on his own. He doesn't realize that if you tell a kid not to do something, they're going to want to do it even more. And then she makes some mistakes, and then he kind of overreacts to her mistakes, and then she overreacts to his overreaction. So it's very human. It's a very understandable story. It's tricky because it's messy because relationships are sometimes messy. But to me and to Alan and Brian, it was very fascinating to us to explore that angle." Regardless of the polarizing reactions, the film went very well later on home media by earning $2.9 million from domestic DVD sales and $5.7 million from domestic Blu-ray sales, bringing a total domestic home video earnings to $8.6 million. And thanks to the financial success of this movie, as an impact, it most likely motivated Warner Bros. In releasing occasionally and exclusively some popular DC animated adaptations for special theatrical occasions, though with some better critical receptions. Considering that the voice acting was the greatest strength of appreciation, especially the main ones, the film received a BTVA People Voice Acting Choice Award in a TV special or direct-to-video title or short at the Behind the Voice Actors Awards, with a couple of BTVA special nominations for the assembled cast and for Tara Strong's performance as Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, who now transitions into Oracle after the main storyline. As for the film itself, despite the questionable situations by creatively understandable reasons, it did find its audience nonetheless, along with some Batman fans, by mostly considering it as a well-crafted adaptation, even myself, despite certain questionable flaws that could have ruined the point of the story. Not to mention that technically, this and the acclaimed source material have something in common regarding polarizing reactions, though different reasons. And regardless of how it went through, it did its fair job with a goal of adapting the popular and qualified book by even interestingly making an exclusive animated universe to be extended with other exclusive digital DC movies. Since this is technically the 26th animated DC original movie in the digital home media lineup or even streaming media, this film works as a standalone movie. Although there can be insane options of literally cutting the unnecessary elements for some people as a certain director's cut, the film still managed in its own right by showing the highlighting animated story of the Joker and the crucial interaction of two main characters that makes them understand the deep psychological joke on a very unfortunate day. At this last honorable point, we are entering into the Hanna-Barbera universe, but this time with Warner Animation Group, and with a specific reason unlike previous parts. So with a combination of beloved characters, superheroes, and action, Warner Bros. Released a 2020 reboot of a beloved franchise as a start of a brand new cinematic universe, essentially influenced by the superhero genre, with Scoob, also typically known as Scooby-Doo in other countries. In this reboot, the film is about the origin of Scooby-Doo and Shaggy when they first met, along with Velma, Daphne, and Fred as kids on Halloween. And after solving a spooky case on that same holiday night, together throughout the years, they have formed eventually a team known as Mystery Inc. by capturing enemies behind creature masks since then. Suddenly, Scooby and Shaggy are attacked by the robotic army led by the evil Dick Dastardly, whose purpose is to take Scooby as the canine key to open the ancient Cerberus gates of the Golden Underworld. So with the power of the duo's friendship, it is up to Scooby, Shaggy, and the gang, along with their newly allied Diddy Sykes, Dynamite, and Blue Falcon Jr. on the Falcon Fury ship to solve the mysterious case behind the three skulls of Cerberus and the Underworld gates before Dastardly and save the world. As we all know, Scooby-Doo has been an animated icon thanks to Hanna-Barbera, and with his popularity, it went to a variety of TV series, specials, and even some movies, especially the live-action films featuring the two ones starring Matthew Lillard as Shaggy, who eventually became the modern official voice, and even several animated direct-to-video movies, starting with Zombie Island released by Warner Bros. Animation. And no theatrical animated film would be happening officially until 2014. While technically there was the 2005 limited release of Scooby-Doo in Where's My Mommy, along with another Hanna-Barbera property, Tom and Jerry The Fast and Furry, but those were for special events purposes only, with not much info. Not to mention that technically another property like Top Cat managed to gather a couple of movies, one released in 2011 called Top Cat the Movie with stylized hybrid 2D Flash CGI animation, and another one entirely made in CGI that serves as a prequel to the entire series called Top Cat Begins, released in 2015, primarily animated and crafted in Mexico, since the cartoon is very popular in that country, with supervision from Warner Bros. Animation for the writing and visual process, yet not necessarily part of the WB lineup, and just WB distribution examples. Anyways, on June 17, 2014, when successfully re-entering the animation competition after the success of the Lego Movie, Warner Bros. Pictures announced that they would reboot the Scooby-Doo film series with an animated film and with a script written by Randall Green. On August 17, 2015, Space Jam animation director Tony Cervone, who also had experience working on several Scooby-Doo home video movies, was hired to direct the animated film, but now with a script by Matt Lieberman. Pam Coates and the Iron Giant producer plus director's wife, Alison Abate, got involved as producers, with additionally Charles Robin and Richard Sokol as executive producers. Phineas and Ferb creator Dan Povenmire was said to be involved in a creative capacity and eventually credited as an executive producer as well. By the way, these several changes when it comes to eventually change screenwriters plus other things is what production went apparently all over the place. Originally, even confirmed at the 2016 CinemaCon, the film's official title was named Scoob, more specifically SCOOB, with a plot previously involving Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Gang working for a large organization, since the spelling initials meant Secret Covert Organization of Otherworldly Beings. Even an animation test was made to explore the look of the film, not to mention that the goal in making the film was intended to lead into a cinematic universe based on Hanna-Barbera's properties, and the film was going to be more of an Avenger-style team-up with the title logo reminiscent to that standard. Plus the fact that there were additional storyboard tests for the first film version opening before eventually re-updating the story and visual elements. The funny fact is that in the original artwork, the film was envisioned by having a much more darker tone, and many characters from the Hanna-Barbera universe were going to be involved, including Penelope Pitstop, Jabberjaw, and Grape Ape. Even the green alien character, the Great Gazoo from the Flintstones, was going to appear as the main villain for this cinematic version. In later September of the same year, it was confirmed that Dax Shepard, despite lacking animation experience, would co-direct the film along with Cervoni, while also revising the script. Sometime later, however, that collaboration would not last long, and in 2018, Shepard was no longer part of the project, and Kelly Freeman Craig was put as the screenwriter instead. Ultimately, once again, another screenwriting change happened involving more than 4 writers like Adam Stickel, Jack Donaldson, Derek Elliott, and once again Matt Lieberman getting the screenplay credit, with Lieberman, Ayel Puddle, and Jonathan E. Stewart having story by billing. Plus the fact that besides of putting the action-packed elements in the heart of the friendship, the writers had to put some modern pop culture humor for modern times. Besides of the signature visual comedy in order to modernize the atmosphere and tone of the film, while having the essence of solving a mysterious case from the cartoons. Funny enough, there were alternate scenes from the origin story when Shaggy adopts Scooby from a pet shop, and interestingly, the additional ones involving the encounter of the first skull by Dick Dastardly, only to be dropped due to most likely pacing reasons. Not to mention that in the original artwork, apparently, Dick Dastardly was supposed to be a secondary antagonist, and with some scenes involving Muttley as his partner to capture Scooby, only to be changed into the main antagonist of the feature, while the role of Muttley had to be reduced to give Dick Dastardly's motivations of opening the gates. Speaking of changes, for the animation, in this case with the collaboration of Real Effects Studios, the same studio that previously collaborated with Warner Bros. Animation on some CGI Looney Tunes cartoons, the goal for the visual aspects is getting the modern elements of environments and epically scaled concepts of heroic battles and world building with additional upgrades on the cartoony gadgets and transportations, including the Falcon Fury ship and Dick Dastardly ship, which the latter inside is surrounded by a lot of mechanical gears with a sense of dark and evil atmosphere when it comes to an evil genius, featuring the Hanna-Barbera characters of high movie quality, mostly updating the character designs faithfully based on the cartoon characters, especially most of the Mystery Gang and Dick Dastardly, who originated from the Wacky Races, and at one point he was going to be very faithful to the series with his classic look in a quite updated way. But then drastic changes had to be made by many redesigns and making him more updated for the final film, with new characterizations in his face, yet still having the dastardly essence and evil genius personality, in a style suitable for a cinematic version reminiscent to superhero cinematic universe franchises, plus the fact of updating both the aspects and personalities of both Dynomat and Captain Caveman, with the former having a more mechanical aspect with intelligence, and the latter has a gladiator warrior type with fluent language reminiscent to the Flintstones.
The only way to take the slag hoople is to defeat the protector in battle, and that's me.
With additionally a prehistoric land featuring prehistoric creatures and cave people. Not to mention that besides fur, they had to craft a lot of details for the environments and the clothing for each character, with a combination of fluent character animation with cartoony movements by also applying recognizable cartoon sound effects. With those elemental materials needed, the animators had a lot of fun by crafting creatively the visual gags reminiscent to the Hanna-Barbera standards, while in some scenes there had to be some live-action references for the subtle movements. Plus the fact that there were a use of creative designs on the little dastardly minion bots called rodents by combining cute appearances with threatening insects transformations with methodically mechanical details and lots of different effects for the action scenes, including the lighting effects for certain characters like ghosts and the creature Cerberus for the climax, which the letter's design had to be a combination of a three-headed beast-like dog and elements from a reptile, with detailed Greek armor for his entire body, plus the bright green lighting details for the eyes and inside mouths in the final render. The funny thing is that at the last moment, one of the artists made a character of the robotic minions by having his head replaced with a vacuum cleaner and literally naming him Dusty, that the crew unexpectedly felt in love that they decided to keep that character into even a redeemable ally thanks to Daphne's maternal love and kindness, and I can most likely agree with the crew. Aww, isn't that fun and cute? It's the most adorable thing I have ever seen, maybe even since WALL-E. Along with some moments that the little robots make cute actions. On a side note, besides of updating Captain Caveman from his original show, Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels, the character D designs had to be also updated by transforming her character from the show with her hairstyle into a more professional looking female ally as part of the Falcon Fury crew. As for Blue Falcon, although he has a brief cameo at the beginning, the crew added another character, which is his son, Brian, with a personality based on social media stars with a character arc of how to become a real hero. Plus the fact that regarding his visual details, it included upgraded feather and metallic textures to his suit parts, including the weaponry and flight gadgets, plus the bright blue eyes from his mask, overall making him modern and most likely reminiscent to the DC Cinematic Universe movies. For the casting, voice actor Frank Walker returned to reprise his role as Scooby-Doo, while the rest, however, in this case, instead of calling the original voice actors of the Scooby franchise, it featured an all-star cast including Will Forte as Shaggy, Gina Rodriguez as Velma, Zac Efron as Fred, and Amanda Seyfried as Daphne, with other members including Mark Wahlberg as the new character Blue Falcon Jr., with Ken Jeong, Kiersey Clements, Tracy Morgan, and Jason Isaacs providing the voices of the updated recognizable Hanna-Barbera characters, which the latter actor used the English accent and tone reminiscent to one of Dastardly's voice actors, Paul Winchell, and all of them have been fans of the Hanna-Barbera series. Fun fact regarding canine characters is that besides of Frank Walker, another voice acting member joined the cast to reprise the role of Muttley, which was Billy West, along with some archived sounds from the original voice actor, Don Messick. The film is noted to have a lot of cameos and references from a variety of Hanna-Barbera content, including the Takamoto bowling place as a tribute reference to the original Scooby-Doo character designer Iwao Takamoto, and the Messick Mountain as a reference to the original voice actor of Scooby-Doo, Don Messick, and even a lot of cameos from very rare Hanna-Barbera characters and TV shows. As for the soundtrack, with Tom Holkenborg as the composer of the film score, the film features a variety of songs performed by different artists, including a couple of new songs called On Me by Thomas Rhett and Kane Brown featuring Ava Max, and Summer Feelings by Lennon Stella featuring Charlie Puth. Not to mention that they included an updated version of the classic Scooby-Doo theme song, performed by Best Coast. Originally, the film was going to be released theatrically worldwide on May 15, 2020, and all the marketing has been prepared, and with trailers referencing great anticipation for the public to witness the ultimate cinematic experience of Hanna-Barbera Media's return to the big screen in the following months of the same new significant year.
Never gonna happen.
But unfortunately, those anticipated expectations did not exactly last long, and nobody in the film community was prepared for what outbreak was to come. Due to the unexpected coronavirus effect that affected the entire movie theater's releases, the film was eventually put on hold for another release date. And regarding that issue, I made myself a fanart poster for the Talent House contest representing the situation. but some days later, unexpectedly, at the last minute, the film was put back for its original release date, but in digital home media streaming, after witnessing the success of Trolls World Tour that became the first animated film to successfully release on the video on demand without mostly the use of movie theaters during the pandemic. And so, after a few years of inconsistently constant rewrites with different writers on and out, plus having fun in animating references, the film was released on its intact May 15 release, with an online live premiere featuring the crew and even the actors who performed the youngest versions of Shaggy, Velma, Fred, and Daphne. Too bad that at the same time, the countdown really confused the worldwide audience, that many thought that they were going to have the movie experience free on YouTube, only to find out that it wasn't the case and they had to see it on specific platforms, and it wasn't available for other countries just yet. Especially the UK, despite that it said that it was going to be available online on May 15, like the USA and Canada. And so when the Scooby-Doo gang finally opened the cinematic experience, the movie successfully topped the digital rental charts in its first 3 weekends, including on Prime Video, Google Play, Spectrum, and the iTunes Store. Although Warner Bros. Didn't report the exact financial numbers, the film nonetheless had a higher sales count than the Trolls sequel, which made $40 million over its first 3 days. So this film remained the top rented film across all services in its second weekend, then on 3 of 4 services in its third. In its fourth week, it remained number 1 on Fandango now, while falling to second on Amazon Prime and fourth on the iTunes charts. However, to make up for its intended theatrical release, the film has been opened in select theaters since later on July 2020, and the movie internationally grossed $24.9 million, against an apparent budget of $90 million. Sure, lower than expected due to the low audience numbers attending the theaters by the pandemic precautions and restrictions, but still managed to be essentially a financial success, though there have been no confirmations of the exact number of gross revenue from the video on demand, and technically became the second theatrical animated film to be released on streaming service. As for the audience's welcoming reception, we could say that the public, either critics or fans overall, pretty much had the same reaction as Fred himself.
I have so many mixed feelings.
Although many enjoyed the animation, visual humor, action scenes, voice acting, and the fun references from its source material and other Hanna-Barbera media, the rest, like the writing, tone, and pop culture humor, especially the questionable casting decisions of just replacing the other voice actors with the exception of Frank Walker as Scooby-Doo, yet not Fred, as one of his rare occasions of not voicing the character, that even the rest of the Scooby-Doo voice acting community were highly disappointed of not being called to reprise their roles, especially Shaggy's voice actor Matthew Lillard, despite technically being a high celebrity, of not having intentions of watching the reboot, all giving the ridiculous point of being unpopular for the heavy WB marketing. And speaking of that, they have interestingly made action figures from the characters. Even with its flaws and not a masterpiece, it did manage to find most of the audience appreciation of just enjoying the film nonetheless, with an interesting start of an intended cinematic universe despite being a polarizing start at the same time. As for recognitions, the movie received several random nominations, including Best Animated Film and even Best Song for On Me, plus other kind of categories. Regarding the mentioned nominated song On Me and Summer Feelings, both records also became successful by having great hit ranks on multiple international charts and even on YouTube. Thanks to the movie's streaming success plus HBO Max, it influenced Warner Bros. Animation to release their animated projects in HBO Max and theaters the following year, with a couple of hybrid movies, including the return of another property from Hanna-Barbera, Tom and Jerry, with CGI animation reminiscent to the hand-drawn look, and the anticipated game crossover, Space Jam: A New Legacy, with hand-drawn animation and CGI animation, featuring a lot of recognizable Looney Tunes characters and a lot of Warner Bros. Movie cameos, including the characters from Hanna-Barbera, besides of the Mystery Gang as one of the audience, as I'm recording this history part. and surprisingly, after the first anniversary of the feature, it was later reissued to be released in North American theaters for a limited time on May 21st to 23rd as even part of the Memorial Weekend, with an additional domestic gross of $850,000. Keep in mind that the film still became successful thanks to the streaming service combined. So this financial result topic can be called a win-win scenario. The movie itself may have been polarizing with its derivative modern execution, but has been considered as a fun yet conceptually interesting start of an intended animated cinematic legacy of the beloved Mystery Gang plus Hanna-Barbera characters in an awesome way for cartoon fans, and even reintroducing the franchise to the new members of the audience. Showing that at the end of the day, with the thematic power of friendship, teamwork, and loyalty, and including individually brains, empathy, tank, and the heart of the group, that the further Mystery Inc. adventure is just a new beginning.
Let's hit it.
Hey, Dusty, watch the shot, please.
What do you say, buddy?
Let's Scooby-Dooby do it!
In conclusion, Warner Bros. Animation not only has been known to have a serious competition in the golden age as one of Disney's active rivals, but also has managed to create some unique pieces of their own animation field besides of making the Looney Tunes movies. And come to think of it, besides of distributing a lot of animated films, they have been specialized in crafting in their lineup animated productions that can be fully animated or include live-action elements before even Sony Pictures Animation has made that trend. Although it got inconsistent failures and only one hit in the 1990s due to problematic marketing and misdirection, the studio generally made improvements by getting once again in the animation game and looking forward more possibilities by trying to make more enjoyable and entertaining movies that can be viewed as solid pieces of entertainment or even popcorn flicks, if you will, with different kind of stories that they can deliver. So with that said, I'm going to count down the top 10 best animated films from Warner Bros. Feature Animation Group, even technically counting those with live action.
Number 10, Smallfoot. Number 9, Quest for Camelot. Number 8, Osmosis Jones. Number 7, Looney Tunes Back in Action. Number 6, The Lego Batman Movie. Number 5, Cats Don't Dance. Number 4, Batman Mask of the Phantasm. Number 3, Space Jam. Number 2, The Lego Movie. And number 1, The Iron Giant. In the end, that is all what I can say. Hopefully you can join me next time and maybe I can think of other things like the small topics of other artists in their animation careers, like these film legends and later other people that are renowned animators in Europe. Hope you liked this special look back, including you, great Animat, dude, bro, aka my subconscious. Oh, and at this point we shall be prepared for more projects from Warner Brothers, including one involving Wile E. Coyote against the Acme Corporation after many backfiring weapons and gadgets inspired by the book of the same name, the animated adaptation and reboot of The Cat in the Hat, and most importantly, the potential toy movie after the Lego Movie franchise featuring pop figures.
With that said, and like Animat says, see you later, dudes. But for the sake of my own style, SCOUTART here, over and out, dudes.
Stress is gone for me, nowhere I'd rather be. I get into my summer feelings, and I'm trying to keep it cool.
Yeah, but like if you want, you can pull over and drop us off here.
We'll walk home.
Yeah. That's all, folks.